the Road Commission for our June 16th virtual working session. Before we start that session, there are a few housekeeping items I would like to cover. Number one, if you would like to make public comment during this meeting, we will prompt you at the appropriate time in the agenda to virtually raise your hand. If you are viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand virtually by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen and then the Raise Hand button at the bottom right of your screen. If you dialed into the meeting from your touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand virtually by pressing *9. Once we get to the public comment section on the agenda, we will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. Just a second. There we go. The chat feature on this Zoom meeting is available only as a technical support for users on their computers or smartphones. If you are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and our systems administrator will help you troubleshoot. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded. A link to the video will be posted to WCRoads.org in the coming days. Today's meeting agenda is posted on WCRoads.org, and there is a link available in the chat if you are joining us from your computer. The agenda calls for a closed session discussion for a legal update on the cases identified in the agenda. When we get to that point in the agenda, I will make an announcement. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. And I'm going to ask for a roll call of those present. Currently speaking is Doug Fuller. Vice Chair Barb Fuller, are you there?
Present.
Rod Green, member? I don't hear Rod yet.
He's here, Doug. There we go. Just had to unmute himself.
There we are. Good morning, Rod.
Good morning.
Gloria Yamas. Gloria, are you there? And Joanne McCullough.
Present.
Thank you, Joanne. Managing Director Cheryl Siddell.
Here.
County Highway Engineer Matt McDonnell.
Present.
Director of Operations Jim Harmon.
Present.
Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman. Daniel?
I'm here. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Public participation. Now we come to public comment. And if you would like to make a public comment, please virtually raise your hand now. If you are viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen and then the Raise Hand button at the bottom right of your screen. If you dialed in to the meeting from a touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand virtually by dialing *9. The meeting host will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. The host will announce at that point your username or last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. As with all of our meetings, while this is a time to receive comments from the public, this is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allocated 3 minutes to address the board. Emily, do we have anybody that would like to address us that you're aware of?
At this time, I don't see any virtual hands.
Okay. At that point, since this is a working session, we vary somewhat from our the way we conduct business at a regular meeting. So With that, I believe we're ready to move into the agenda. And I will not ask for an agenda item or an approval on that agenda. And I will turn it over to Director Siddell. Cheryl?
Sure. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The first thing that we have on our agenda is employee attraction and retention. So obviously this is a vital issue for us at the Road Commission. The staff that we have is our greatest resource. We say that time and time again, whether it's the staff that we are seeking to break on board or trying to retain the existing staff that we have. We think that we have a very good workplace, but we are continually evaluating that to make sure that we are still relevant and that our workforce is being supported in the manner that they feel that they should be, and that we can continue to do so as an employer. So I know that Nicole Peterson and Alicia Held are our HR representatives, and they are both here today. So I would like to hand that over. Nicole's going to take the lead on the discussion. She's got a PowerPoint presentation that she and Alicia have put together, but certainly it's also intended as a dialogue. So if there's questions as we're going along, please ask them. We have a lot of information to share, but we'd like to make sure that any questions are being answered as we're going along. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nicole and Alicia.
Thank you, Cheryl. So yeah, Emily will help me go along in our PowerPoint presentation. But what I'd like to do is, especially for the new commissioners, to give you an overall view of what we do to attract and some of the things that we feel like are benefits to be able to retain our employees here at the Road Commission. So if you'd go to the next slide, Emily, and we'll start with our recruitment. Next slide. So I thought we'd start with some of the organizations that we work with locally or within the state to help with our recruiting efforts. One of the big ones that I've been involved with through 2019 and 2020 was the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency out of Lansing. I've gone to several meetings that were smaller in nature with them about recruiting and onboarding and benefits that assist veterans to enter back into the workforce or to stay at an employer. We did apply and received bronze level certified veteran-friendly employer status, and hoping to make it to possibly silver next year. We work with our local Michigan Work, so I have a direct contact there that I communicate with, and who we've been on several calls with, working with Washtenaw Community College as well. We reach out to local high schools. We have our summer students that we have this year. This year was a little bit different. We didn't bring as many back just under our COVID-19 conditions, but we reach out to them, and not only do we work with them on recruiting, but we've been to some career fairs. Alicia and I went last year to Skyline to work with students that had their resumes and to do mock interviews with them. But I think going out to the high schools helps them understand that if college isn't their path, that there's other paths, you know, with heavy truck driving, or if they decide to do mechanic or something like that. And then really our biggest resource we have here would be current employees. We get a lot of employee referrals. Next slide. We attend various career fairs throughout the year. We went to the Hire My Vet at Washtenaw Community College. We've attended the career fair at the University of Northwestern Ohio. They are infamous for mechanics. Even if we didn't hire directly, we were able to get them not only familiar with who we are, but them also to refer people that maybe they know that are in the area of Washtenaw County. And then we try to go annually to the University of Michigan, their School of Engineering career fair for our interns. Next slide. We advertise as much as possible. This is a list of what's free for us. So when we have a position that's available to the outside organization, right now we have our customer relations representative posted. It is on our WCRC website. It is promoted on LinkedIn. It gets put on our Facebook page, not only to the public, but also we have a private Facebook page for employees, just so that they are aware. As I said, employee referrals is very popular for us. It goes out on Twitter. We post on the CRA website, which Emily will touch on their initiative and efforts later on in the presentation for recruiting statewide and trying to get people interested in fields related to road agencies. My talent would be the one that is associated with Michigan Works. That is free, and when that's posted, actually veterans have the first 24 hours access to it to be able to apply for a position, and then it opens up to the rest of those that are looking for employment. We do college websites, and then we also do signage out front. So the sign shop has made signs for us that we put out periodically, if like for drivers or mechanics, what we may be seeking. We've also done the large digital boards as well, just to attract attention to us. Next slide. And then when we need to pay for our advertisements, we do enhance postings on Facebook just to reach more people. So if somebody has something in their bio that they're a driver and that's their job, it may post, it'll show up on your Facebook page as like an ad that you may be interested in. Indeed would be the largest. We've really steered away from other sites like monster.com. Indeed would definitely be the most popular to use, that people are searching for employment. So that's what we post on. And then when we have something a little more specialized, we use the Michigan Municipal League. Next slide. So some challenges, mostly what we find is with our heavy truck drivers, we always, for last 5 years at least, I would say, we seem to always have a vacancy somewhere within the organization, and we continue to try to seek a heavy truck driver position. Those candidates are required to have a CDL-A with a tank endorsement. The A would be the challenging part, I think, for people. The tank endorsement is just a test, a written test that you do at the Secretary of State. We do have a 100-pound lifting requirement for those positions. So sometimes that eliminates candidates. And then we do, require that you're essentially available 24/7. We have, and if you accept a call-in, let's say for a winter snowstorm, you do need to report within 1 hour. So you need to be living within a certain radius of us and have transportation available for you to be able to make it to the district that you're reporting to. Next slide. This talks about finding applicants from underrepresented groups. These are statistics, mind you, people, it is voluntary if you want to submit to what your demographics are, but for 2019 and 2020 through Workbright that we used for our recruiting efforts on people applying, these would be the responses we've received in the last year and a half-ish for who's applying. Next slide. And this would be male or female on who's applied in 2019 and 2020 for our positions. Next slide. Emily, do you want to talk about the CRA recruiting campaign? I know you were heavily involved with that.
Sure. So I am a member of the PR committee on the CRA. And so one of the things that we were asked to do about 1.5 years ago was try to help raise awareness for road workers in general. And what that morphed into is really trying to help elevate the brand and have a set of tools that road commissions could use across the entire state to help recruit people for the work that we do. And so we like to think that this is a first step, and that maybe this is something the PR committee could use for different types of campaigns, but we had to start somewhere. And so what the focus of this campaign was is really looking to try to recruit millennials and Gen Z to consider road work as a profession. And so you can see from this graphic, it's really trying to focus on becoming that road warrior. These, people that work at road commissions, snowplow drivers, truck drivers, they are hardcore, right? They do hard jobs. And so we wanted to try to play into that and really help build that brand. I think other industries have done a better job than road industries have done in really making people feel proud of where they work. I think like linemen is a really great example of an industry that we're trying to kind of be similar to in how they promote their employees. So unfortunately, this campaign we launched at the CRA Highway Conference in March, about 3 days before the entire state shut down. So it is something that we are definitely, the tools are there. It's a whole toolkit for road commissions to use. And I know that we want to do some things here at Washtenaw. We haven't done things with this campaign yet due to all of the concerns around COVID, but it is something out there. The toolkit has banners that have already been created, social media graphics, brochures that we can put our logo on to really try to get the word out there to millennials and Gen Z that road work is a viable career and a way that you can get back to your community. And so we're hoping to, or planning to do more with this campaign as we get throughout the year. It's just been an unfortunate time to launch a recruiting campaign in the middle of a global pandemic, but it is something out there. I think it's a good set of tools for us to use on all of our different channels. There's also these outdoor banners that we could order. So the message is to really try to improve the image and amplify the image of what it means to be a road worker. And there are lots of positions at road commissions. I'm obviously not a truck driver, so we just focused with this campaign on those road workers, the maintenance workers, truck drivers. They're called different things at different places, but really wanted to focus on that area since most road commissions struggle like we do to fill those positions recently. So that's something that the PR committee is working on and has now launched to all road commissions across the state.
Emily, can I ask a question at that point?
Sure.
How to start that? Has there been an attempt on the part of the PR committee to perhaps regionalize outreach attempts to the public? In other words, what I'm really thinking of is Livingston, Washtenaw, Lenawee, just because they're in line north to south, jointly push for a 3-month period or something like that, and then move over a tier and pick up.
Like the Southeast Council.
Yeah. So that there's the more people that become aware of this at any one time. And I'm just thinking of, if we could coordinate putting signs out. The banners even are not even necessarily a bad idea at places where there's traffic choke points. And just a thought.
Yeah, I think that we did not get that granular yet, Doug. So the first goals of this was we launched as a presentation at the CRA Highway Conference. And then right. CRA board has agreed to put some money behind it as far as social media advertising from CRA's kind of statewide perspective. I think that would be a great topic from a regional perspective at maybe at a Southeast Council meeting to see if our council would be interested in doing that. I think it's a little tricky with hiring during COVID right now, but I think that's a great idea. Maybe a topic on the next Southeast Council meeting, if we can, to have that discussion, because you're right. The more we try to work together to elevate this message, the better. And I think doing it on a geographical, regional basis makes a lot of sense. I appreciated that the CRA board was willing to put some money behind this just from a state level. And they are really trying to make their landing page that is branded like you're seeing here and as part of this campaign, a landing page where if you're interested in road work, you start there and then we all can post our jobs there. Nicole mentioned that they have their new job posting website. And so the idea would be they put out information statewide, we put our information, and they can go to either our website if they're interested just in Washtenaw, or they can go to the state website and look for positions in areas that they're interested in or counties that they're interested in across the state. So I think regional would be great. We just didn't get that far yet.
Okay. What about poaching?
Well, that's a little tricky.
Understood. I always, driving around, walking around, whatever around, if you think about what we do and I'm not altogether sure I like the road warrior approach, but fine, I get that. People that have similar work requirements to ourselves are the trash haulers. And I don't think the trash haulers necessarily have to have a requirement for Class A licenses. Most of the trucks are rigid and they don't normally pull trailers. But those guys work under all conditions. So the mere fact that it's snowing is not something that's, or raining or whatever it is, too hot, too cold, whatever, where our guys have to learn how, and women have to learn how to work in that environment. So do the people who collect our refuse. So I just, every time I see a refuse truck, I think, there's 2 or more potential employees right there.
So
poaching.
Doug, I don't know if you would call it poaching, and Nicole and Alicia, you can help me with this. Last winter when we were looking for especially temporary drivers at that point, because we really needed to be able to, perform our winter maintenance adequately.
Right.
We attempted to take advantage of those that may be rolling off a seasonal employment, and specifically looking at some of the contractors, knowing that there may be drivers associated with some of those industries that would be looking for winter work. So I don't know, Nicole, if you or Alicia want to build on what you did under those circumstances.
Alicia would be more familiar on who she reached out to. We definitely had, publicized with employees. We asked people to, like in operations superintendents, Jim Harmon, to be able to reach out to vendors. We had flyers made up that were sent out so that we were communicating with them the positions we had available if they had people that they were laying off. So we do try to work with our vendors or suppliers and let them know positions we have available, even when they're just temporary through the winter.
And one of the challenges was with the contractors is some of them are making more when they're off on unemployment than they would be working with us for the winter. So that's a big challenge as well.
Yes, it would.
I have a question. You mentioned that we've been trying to work with veterans. Do they receive some type of veterans preference in their application once they're being considered?
No, we do not.
Do not? Okay, so when we say that we're looking at veterans, we just look at them in terms of an available pool of workers?
Yes.
I see. And then I had a question about the 100-pound lifting requirement. Is that across the board, or?
That would be our heavy truck drivers, heavy equipment operators.
Okay, because I think by our own admission, that cuts out a lot of people. Is there anything that we can do to kind of work around that requirement or lower it, or what can we do?
If there was any kind of lowering, I can't see it going between anything of even 75 or 80 pounds. When you think about the work that they're required to do, whether it's changing their blades, which can easily weigh 100 pounds, their underbody blades, guardrail work, there is a lot of regular tasks that they're completing that are quite heavy.
And that
Okay.
is challenges that we have because our job description is titled heavy truck driver. And I know that it has been, different titles have been utilized with different agencies. At the end of the day, I think that's why the PR committee, sort of came up with this road warrior concept. They have to have that commercial driver's license, that CDL. And so that's why we have stuck with the terminology heavy truck driver. But they do much more than just drive. There's a very physical component to the job, and that's where the weight requirements do come into play. And so that too has turned off certain applicants when they realize that it is not simply just operating the vehicle, that they actually have to get out and have that physical component as well. So that has been one of the challenges for our profession, is that you have to have both components, both the commercial driver's license as well as the physical ability to complete the work.
Okay. And then
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rod.
I'm sorry. And now the tank requirement, is there a possibility that might be modified in terms of attracting possible applicants?
We do at times, we have interviewed candidates that meet the CDLA, and if they're offered a position, give them the opportunity to obtain that before they start.
Okay. And then we're in close proximity on the east and west to Wayne County and Jackson County. Are any of our efforts to recruit people, does it reach out to either of those counties?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Reach out how? We definitely have people that attempts.
In terms of our media attempts.
I would absolutely say we are, there is a base that is in Jackson County that I was going to go to for a veteran event. We have people that live all over. We're not strictly outside of the high schools. We're not strictly, staying within the county per se, electronic means or anything like that.
And Commissioner, on our Facebook posts in particular, whenever you do a Facebook boost on a post, we can select the geographic location that you're targeting. And so we do try to pick, whenever I set those up, we're doing, Jackson area, Ann Arbor area, Detroit area. They do have to be able to report within that 1 hour time frame. So we can't go too far out, but we do, when we're setting up those Facebook targeted posts, we are showing those to people outside of just the Ann Arbor area. And I think Jackson has been a good area that we've received a number of employees from that side of the county.
What type of inroads are made into Wayne County?
I don't know the number of employees, if we've had any employees come from like Wayne County Road Department or other Wayne County, but it is something that we definitely, that's part of the reach that we try to get to on our Facebook posts.
Okay.
We do have several employees from the Belleville area, so there is some reach into Wayne County as well. I'd say that there's probably more into Jackson County than there is into Wayne County.
Okay. I only raised that because, I noticed that the applicant pool, as it relates to minorities and female and others, it looked like the applicant pool said 14%. I guess I'm wondering what percentage is actually hired. I suspect it's much smaller than that 14%. And, if we're in close proximity to Wayne County and we're trying to boost the number of minority applicants, it would seem like we would maybe pay a little more attention to our neighboring county. That's where they're at.
Well, we can certainly explore those options, and if there's any avenues that you're aware of, we'd be happy to plug into those as well. We are, I think as Nicole has shown and will continue to show through this, we need drivers. We need qualified drivers. So if there's any avenues that we are missing at this point in time, we would be happy to explore what those might be.
Now I know that we're in touch with Washtenaw Community College. Have we made any contacts at all with Wayne County Community College?
I have not worked directly with them, no.
Okay, all righty. Well, that might be, a source, maybe.
Yeah, the days where I could target a certain area with a newspaper ad because it was an observer and it went, you know, to this area are gone. So everything being online really, I feel like, has a real far-reaching audience, because if someone wants to come and this is where they want to work, they'll be able to find it.
Rod, this is Jim. A couple of things to add to Nicole's remarks. CRASIF, one of our insurance pools, refers to our heavy truck drivers and heavy equipment operators as industrial athletes. The job is very labor intensive, and it does require a degree of strength and ability in order to complete that work. As Nicole said, it's more than just operating the truck, which is a requirement, and they have to have that professional licensure to do that, but the job involves much more than that. Furthermore, the tanker endorsement, that's a requirement because we carry brine liquid on all of our winter maintenance equipment, our new equipment, dust control, and so there's special licensure requirements with that endorsement to be able to safely operate the equipment with that liquid sloshing around. It has impact on the physics of the equipment. So there's some additional expertise that's required to operate equipment with onboard liquid. And then finally, it's important to note many of our employees and recent hires, and Nicole and Alicia can attest to this, do not reside in Washtenaw County. They commute from outside Washtenaw County, relatively close, simply because many can't afford to live in the county because of the cost of living. They'll reside in Grass Lake, they'll reside in Belleville, as Cheryl had mentioned, to the north, to the south, and commute to and from the county for cost considerations, cost reasons. And we have to be careful. We select applicants that are within that 1 hour emergency call-in parameter.
Sure.
We couldn't hire somebody who's up in Port Huron. They wouldn't be able to get here quick enough, as an example.
Right. Sure. We understand that, I just hope that we look at, look at Wayne County a little closer in terms of, there are some parts of Wayne County that are very close to us, so.
Yes, sir.
I would like to say something that I have been putting the job postings on our nextdoor.com and also our Facebook. And I did have one response. It was from a 17-year-old was interested, and that was good. So I just referred him to, I just answered the question for him. But I don't think, at least in my area, people have been familiar, with the job postings. I think it's right that because it's online, it's not a newspaper or anything you can go to, it's much more challenging. So I have been posting on our nextdoor.com, which has about 4,000 people on it, and our Facebook, which is, open to the public.
I think another challenge is, I know when I started here in 2008, I didn't know what a road commission was. I didn't know what we did. And actually my dad had found the ad in the newspaper, and I had prior governmental experience, and that's how I ended up being attracted here. But I don't know if people really understand who we are and what we do.
Speaking of that, Nicole, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Rod.
Yeah. Have we considered, given your experience, Nicole, about being unfamiliar with what we did, and I also confess that when I joined the commission, I had a limited understanding of what we do. Have we considered the possibility of a speakers bureau to maybe go around to our high schools and other agencies and, let people know what we do and what opportunities exist?
So we do talk about that a little bit later, but I just touch on it briefly. But, we are way more in our community than we ever have been before. When they go to touch a truck, there is a hiring sign there. We have had flyers to pass out, you know, because there's the big touch a truck over in Ypsilanti. We go to Dexter, Chelsea. We do a lot of community engagements from preschools, you know, visiting so that the kids can be in the truck, and as you know, we bring signals so they can see how big they are and signs. And so, you know, we've been in parades. That has increased so much that I do think that education on who we are is getting stronger.
Could I just ask, what channels should we be tapping into that we are not? And what are the barriers? One of the things that we've talked about over the past several years is, do the requirements for the positions align with the true need for the position, or is it a barrier that then discourages applicants? If there are channels that we should be using, like Joanne, you said your Nextdoor and your Facebook, but not everybody everywhere, as you guys have heard me beat this drum before, has access to the internet or a computer. So where do we need to be that we're not in order to do better in the underrepresented groups? We need your help. Tell us where we need to be meeting people, talking to people, distributing information. Should we be putting stuff up on billboards in certain parts of the county? Help us with this.
That's, you know, we have our signage that's gone out in front of all of our different yards, whether it's, you know, over on Carpenter Road or North Territorial or here on Zeeb. So we get the signage, the visual there. When there's times where we've mailed out, you know, Michigan Works is a good partner that we have here in the county. I've mailed out to veteran agencies. I've sent stacks of flyers to, like I said, the military base in Jackson. So they were able to pass those out when they had one of their weekends where people from across the state were returning, even if they're just in the reserves. We send the electronic flyers to professors directly at, say, Eastern in the construction management, and they're printing those out and passing them out or doing word of mouth to their students that they may recommend. I'm not sure. I mean, we do. If somebody has an idea, we try it. It's just still, I think for myself, I think the majority of people still looking, it is online. That's where you're going to find the most up-to-date information. And I know not everybody has access for that. And that's where when you do go to places like the library or Michigan Works, they're able to work with people directly to be able to find those postings.
I'm wondering, I don't know if this is permittable, but everyone gets a water bill, and sometimes they have, they introduce things on the back of it. I was just wondering if that's possible to periodically put something about job postings for the road commission on the back of the water bill.
Well, there is a thought I've never even considered, Joanne.
Well, there's also tax bills, right, that go out twice a year.
Yes.
Yep.
Do you want to be associated with that?
Well, if somebody needs a job, Nicole,
I know,
to
but
pay their taxes.
We always have to beat the drum on our projects aren't funded by your taxes. I just feel like there could be a conflicting message there.
There could be.
Joanne? But it's certainly worth, we can reach out to YCUA to see if there is an avenue there. My guess is that if we meet any resistance, assuming of course it would be permissible, would be that we would be competing with them for the same employees. But if they're full, then and they'd be willing to allow us to do that, assuming it's permissible, that we can certainly reach out to them.
Well, it seems a water bill is a lot.
Pardon?
A water bill would be a lot less controversial.
Yeah, and Nicole is correct. We spend a lot of time trying to clarify how we're funded, so that may have more questions than answers, but maybe that's okay too, because at least we're generating interest.
How do we get into the neighborhoods? How do we reach people at home? I don't know how. I'm asking, seriously, I'm asking for help. Where are we not, what are we not taking advantage of in terms of reaching people who would be interested in a job? There are other jobs besides heavy truck driver too. So, you know, the 100-pound weight limit I've asked before, how frequently do we retest our existing employees on that requirement? Because I think if it's going to be a requirement, then there needs to be insurance with an E, not an I, insurance that our employees continue to meet that standard.
Well, I know
So
that in the African American,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say that I know that in the African American community, the churches play a prominent role. People are there, people are listening. If we could reach out to the churches as well. I understand it's an outdated, maybe becoming an outdated medium, but you know, print, you know, is still good in places like the Michigan Chronicle, which caters to the African American community. There are some things I think that we could do that maybe we're not doing. So
Is there
churches,
still
definitely churches.
Is there still a ministerial alliance, and do they meet, Rod?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're meeting Thursday.
So
now,
is that an avenue we could do better?
Absolutely, absolutely.
How do we do that?
There are at least 3 African American groups that we can reach out to that involve clergy. There are at least 3 clergy groups of African Americans where we can reach out to them and they can maybe take the information to their churches. But I know churches, beauty salons, barbershops, hair places, you know. I mean, there are places we could go out into the community and probably touch people a lot easier than what we're doing.
That would be great. Help us with that, seriously.
Okay. And then, like I said, print, places like the Michigan Chronicle. I don't know whether we've ever used them, but it wouldn't cost much to do an ad.
So I hear all these ideas.
We can look into that.
And I'm sorry that I came on. I wanted to know, is the first point referrals for employees?
That would be our most popular.
Okay.
There's no bonus associated with that. There's no preference to that.
Okay. So the other question I had, and working in the other industry that I work in,
who's speaking? I can't see everybody.
Gloria.
Oh,
it's
hi.
Gloria. Hi. So, so at AT&T, Comcast, some of those other places, you hire in and they provide a training or a path to that particular job. If it's a higher paying job, I don't know, where does this job sit in? And if you're going to compete with, because I've had people now that found out that I'm on the commission have asked me, hey, what about jobs? What about a job? And the field that I work in, people have to have, you know, they have to have that CDL, but they don't have the Class A because we don't pull those type of vehicles. And it's not unusual. We also have that 100-pound lifting requirement. And I indeed can still lift 100 pounds. I think it gets kind of sticky when you're going to try and set that in there. Because if somebody is physically doing that job, then there's assumption that they can continue to lift that 100 pounds. Because if they cannot, then it goes into some labor issues or somebody, do you know what I mean? But if you're doing that job and, for example, carrying a ladder every day and that ladder weighs 75 pounds and you have to carry tools, then it's assumed that you can continue throughout your career do that as long as you're doing your job. I mean, if somebody is always in those fields, but I don't know if that, I'm just throwing that idea out there. Do you have a path for people that are in here that you have training and or AT&T also pays for the license of people that apply and get. And I don't know if that's something that you guys have considered as a path to advancement within the road commission. If somebody comes in at a different level and is looking to advance, how do they make that into that? Is that a higher paying position? I'm just one.
Well, as you know, Gloria, that would all be subject to bargaining.
Right.
We did work out with TPOAM where we hired 3 mechanics that did not have their CDL-A. They had their CDL-B, and we did internal training here and gave them 6 months to be able to obtain their CDL-A.
Okay.
There was controversy associated with that, a little bit of drama as we reached the conclusion, but we were successful in those 3. We have not discussed it for other positions at this time. I did broach it delicately with their business agent and one of their stewards about the sign erector and having that option for that position. And it wasn't a real warm welcome, but it can be a continuing conversation. We have looked at and talked about kind of thrown everything up on the wall to see other areas we could work in, like apprenticeship type programs. It's just not something that we've found works for us right now. But we have had discussions and we're open to continuing that, absolutely.
So, and I guess the wage is a competitive thing, right? And I don't know where we set competitively with people who hold those licenses. And that if I think about AT&T is the closest thing that I know, the technicians there that have that weight requirement and have to have CDL Bs, you know, not C, for the equipment that they pull.
We completed a wage study and implemented in their new contract, you know, some increases in wages following that wage study that was done in the end of 2018. So as of right now, I would say that we absolutely are competitive, and we had to increase, like for mechanics, that was an area we were struggling in, and increase wages to be able to attract and retain mechanics.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, we've broached the idea before, but are we still interested in establishing an apprentice type of program with Washtenaw Community College or other schools where we could actually train an individual who might not have the skill, so that at the end of the training period, they'd have the skills that we need to hire them?
We were having ongoing conversations with them prior to kind of the world shutting down. So I haven't had anything new on my calendar. I think the last time we spoke was probably February.
Okay.
I've had ongoing conversations with Washtenaw Community College, and I think Nicole touched on it briefly earlier. We have also been working with the Michigan Works office. They have a program, and help me, Nicole, if I misspeak here, where they will work with an applicant on going through and obtaining their CDL and then placing them, and we would be known employer once that person obtains the CDL. One of the challenges for us as being a smaller employer is to stand up a true apprenticeship program just with the resources that we currently have available. So being able to partner with someone, whether it would be Washtenaw Community College, Michigan Works, I think is going to probably be our best bet for having success in that type of an endeavor.
Okay.
Nicole?
Yes.
Question. Washtenaw Community College has recently, say in the last 2 or 3 years, reinstituted a program of driver training for Class A licenses. And they're doing that through a contractor, some school or another that they have engaged, and that's fine. I'm wondering, and it's I'm wondering if if there is a mechanism whereby we can gain access to the graduating students. And I don't know whether that's online, whether that's in a personal presentation. As has been pointed out, what we're looking for are road workers who have Class A licenses. There's a better scope of the activity than the description as being a heavy truck driver. The 100-pound thing, which we are all concerned with for a variety of reasons, is a very real thing. And it's, among other things, premised on the fact that for a lot of our culvert head walls, we build head walls out of sacked concrete. Each one of those sacks is 90 pounds. So the 100-pound thing is a very real limitation, and it's something that our guys do, not every day of their lives, but certainly they do. Barb's point about, whether or not somebody who's been here 35 years can still do the same thing that they did when they were 20, probably not. And I don't, boy, that gets onto a really slippery slope of, testing people for something that they're already doing. And I'm aware that there are tests for a variety of skills out there in the construction trades. Crane operators are a big one. Thankfully, we don't happen to have any of those, but a huge deal. They have to maintain their certifications down through time. The idea of telling somebody who's been a good employee for 23 years at the road commission, you don't seem to be able to carry a 90-pound sack of cement as well as you did when you were 25, is a slope I don't really think that we want to get onto. I like Gloria's thoughts about, line workers for AT&T who have to carry a ladder and their tools and probably some spare parts when they're trying to, gain access to a pole. Do you retest that person when he's 52, when he started when he was 22? I don't know. That's a real thing.
We don't retest. We don't. If someone was not meeting the requirements of their job, or there was some physical challenges that were occurring, we would send them for a physical evaluation at Concentra if it came to that point. And honestly, in my 13 years, that's happened once. As far as the CDL program at Washtenaw, I'm not aware of one. That's what they talked to us about on trying to have training at their campus. Trainco used to be there, but they're now only in Taylor.
Aha, okay.
So they don't have a training program with CDLA. And what Cheryl had talked about with Michigan Works, they do pay for the training and testing of people that are looking for employment there. Maybe they've just come out of the prison system or have lost a long-term job, whatever the reasons may be. Right. They do have a retraining program.
Joanne hit on something a few minutes ago that I thought was something that we should be looking at, is how, and Barb mentioned it as well, how do we move from having a job application process that's online? And if you're online and you're the sort of person who looks for a job online, you'll find us without too much work. I'm not sure that across the entire county, for a whole variety of reasons, whether it's the extreme west where, electricity is still questionable, let alone, broadband access, to people that don't have broadband access for whatever set of reasons. And I don't know if there's a way that we can reach out to neighborhood groups electronically, which is what Joanne suggested there. Sounded like a good idea. I'm not aware of the Michigan Chronicle that Rod mentioned, but I know that's the cultural thing, I think, probably as much as anything else. But certainly I have been told by a variety of people that we need to reach out through the African-American ministers and those groups. And I think, Rod, didn't you say there was three different groups?
Yes, there's at least 3 groups that we can reach out to. I'm actually going to meet on Thursday with one of the groups, but if we can just get the information out there that we have jobs available to try to boost the applicant pool, that's certainly one source that we can look to.
Yeah.
And I can help with that. But I do believe, yeah.
I agree. And I'm not trying to take any responsibility off of Alicia and I, but that goes back to a lot of the word of mouth. When I go to a Society of Human Resources meeting, one of the first things they have is anybody that has available jobs can stand up and let a couple hundred people know that we're hiring for whatever. So if people, I know as commissioners are going to a lot of different meetings, if you're able to help share that information or in your other lives, yeah, that's absolutely helpful. And if you need something in print that to take with you, we can certainly put that together. Advertising, I advertise on my own, through my own personal Facebook or in Brighton groups that I belong to because I live in Livingston County. I'm sure Alicia does some of her own as well, but apps like Nextdoor, you can't get in unless you're a member of that neighborhood. So that again goes back to helping with referrals or, if you have access and assisting us to get that posted and out there into the public.
So Nicole, let me ask you, in a flyer that you put together for a job posting, if it's an 8.5 by 11 that can get distributed at a community center or wherever, do we also then indicate some of the benefits of working here, or is it only what are the qualifications? There's tuition reimbursement, there's health care, there's an allowance, if I remember right, for going to a gym or a place where you can stay physically fit.
Yeah.
For someone who needs an entry point to get a degree, it's a great job for doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
Nicole, do you want to move through we've got some of those outlined, Commissioner Fuller, just to kind of help everybody be on the same page of what benefits we do offer. Do we want to move through to those and then we can keep answering questions as we go?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Emily, before we move from this, can I just say something? My guess is if you look at a breakdown of other road commissions, it's probably similar. If it isn't, then hopefully we can learn from them. But my guess is it's similar. So it seems like this is a challenge statewide. So I would hope the County Road Association would be able to help all the road commissions, find some creative ways, or they've got lots of resources as well. Maybe they can help us with recruitment.
Dan, and that's that's exactly the purpose behind the PR's committee's campaign. And so unfortunately it kind of got cut at the knees to start because of the pandemic, but that is exactly the purpose behind. And so the focus for this campaign was on millennials and underrepresented groups. And so I think if this is successful and something that's useful for all the different road commissions, it's definitely something that there's room for more specific campaigns. In marketing, you need to speak to somebody or you're speaking to nobody. And so that's why we chose that millennial and Gen Z generation to start as kind of who we're talking to with this campaign. But it is something that CRA is working on. And you're right, it is demographics from what we're seeing on this chart to just not being able to find applicants at all is a challenge that road commissions across the entire state are finding or have.
So Emily, if you could bring me back to employee demographics, I think that was the last one we were on. So just to give everyone information on who we are here. Next slide. We have our organizational chart, which you can also find in the employee handbook. And then I send out new ones periodically when their names attached as people move around within the organization or added or removed. And so here we have our current organizational chart. Next slide, we have 134 full-time equivalents within our organization, eight vacancies. So those vacancies, we have one in administration, we have one in engineering, actually two in engineering, and then when I count sign erector, and then the remaining are heavy truck drivers. Next slide. We have 79 TPOM positions, so union positions, and then out of that, 134, 55 are non-union positions. Next slide. Within our organization, 13% of us are female, so that actually is 16 of us, and 87% male. Next slide. And then here we have our race or ethnicity on what we are within our organization. This is pulled off of forms that are voluntary. So it's not that we're doing our guessing. If somebody doesn't want to report, just like if they don't want to disclose that they're a veteran status, they don't have to. That's the same when we pull our numbers for the recruiting. Those are voluntary forms. Next slide. Here are the ages that we have here at our organization. Kind of give you an idea on the percentages on where we're at in our demographics and our aging workforce. So I think we're, in my opinion, spread pretty evenly. Obviously the bigger being in the 40s and 50s.
What's the percentage of the 41 to 50? I can't see it on my screen.
36%.
Thank you.
Next slide. And then here we have our years, our length of service. So you can see we've kind of gone through a pretty big hiring boom, I would say, in the last 5 years. That's where the majority of our employees would, I'd say, make up for who we represent. Next slide. So retention, some of the things Barb talked about, you know, what are we putting on the flyer? What are things that attract people to us and keep people here? Next slide. So when we do our recruiting and onboarding, we use a website called WorkBright, an organization where actually Gloria and Joanne just went through on doing all of their paperwork online. It's a secure, easy website that you can complete on your own time and submit all of your pre-hire paperwork to us. That way, when you come in for your first day, you're not completely overwhelmed with doing all that, you know, W-4, I-9 forms. That's all done, and you can start to really focus on the stuff you really want to know, like where am I sitting and where do I put my lunch, because that seems, you know, everybody just wants to get settled in. But it also gives them an opportunity to look through things before they officially start. So you have access to the employee handbook, all of our policies and procedures, the union contract, and anybody and everybody can find that also on Employee Central. So that is a location where we have been keeping employees up to date on any of Cheryl's things about COVID-19 that's gone out, any materials that we've had related to that, all of our policies, procedures, all of our benefits is available there. So if somebody was interested in working for us and wanted to know what employee contributions are to our Blue Cross Blue Shield and what kind of coverage we have available, you can find that. You know, it's not a secret. I'm proud of how well we've done with our rates and the benefits that we're able to offer. And so that gives somebody an insight before they even apply, would this be a good move for me? Next slide. As far as compensation, as I explained previously, we did complete that study in 2018 that did move some ranges around. We had some people that were green circled, meaning that maybe they were a little low and they needed to be brought into the bottom of their range. We luckily didn't have to red circle anybody, which freezes them because they were over and out of their range. That never makes anybody truly happy. And we have been doing, as a part of our salary administration program, those that get reviews, so non-union employees are eligible for an increase or a lump sum payment if they're already at the top of their range. There are step increases associated with the TPOEM, and they have annual percent increases built into their contract as well. And then at the end of the year, or we compile all of our information, and come by February, each employee receives a total compensation statement to let them know not only how much they earned as far as gross wages, but how much the employer contributed and how much they contributed towards their Blue Cross Blue Shield or their dental. You know, for a family, you can look at up to $17,000 that the employer has contributed to pay for your medical, and I, as an employee, I'd maybe paid $200. I think that's substantial for employees to see, to really know the benefits that they have here. Things, when you're getting reimbursed, the mechanics get a tool reimbursement, you get a fitness reimbursement, you get your protective footwear. It's easy to forget about all those checks we cut to you through the year, but then you get this final statement on all the benefits you had for the year. So that's been, I think, really popular and a great program that we implemented a few years ago. Next slide. So we're talking about benefits that are available for employees. We do our medical, so that's all through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. The medical and prescription is available immediately upon hire. So that would be effective day one. That has been much appreciated. We used to have a waiting period and we decided to waive that. That's helped with recruitment efforts when we're doing offer letters. Nobody wants to go without insurance, and if you've ever been offered COBRA, you know that you're paying that full premium, and it's quite costly. We have our dental insurance, vision. We have employer paid life insurance. That's one time your annual salary up to a maximum of $50,000. You're also able to purchase additional life insurance at our group rates on your own as well. We pay for short-term and long-term disability. And I guess I need to make this clear for all the commissioners, because I shouldn't, or especially the new ones. There is parity among all of our groups for our benefits. So the medical coverage and rates that we are all paying is the same for non-union and TPOEM. We do pattern for our non-union group and our union group. So we're not getting different benefits between the two. Both groups have short-term and long-term disability policies paid for them as well by the employer. Next slide. Another huge thing, we have our MERS defined benefit, which is Municipal Employee Retirement System. That's what MERS stands for. We still have a defined benefit pension that we're offering to employees, which is becoming rare. We have a healthcare savings plan for those that were hired from 2010 and forward that we are contributing, and they match towards a healthcare savings plan. Since they're no longer offered retiree insurance, we have the healthcare savings plan, and then some optional programs that employees could contribute towards, like a flexible spending account or 457, which 457s are specific only to government entities. Our paid time off, we have 11 paid holidays through the year. That's effective immediately. So if you started the day before July 4th holiday, you're gonna get that day off. We have, I think, a rich annual leave program for employees. And then something newer to us, we have the paid parental leave that was approved by the commissioners last year, where an employee, whether the father or mother, gets 1 week paid to stay home with their newborn or newly adopted child. Next slide. The reimbursement programs we talked about, we have tuition reimbursement for non-union and union employees. That is at 100%, assuming depending on what grade that you receive. We have our protective footwear reimbursement. That's $150 a year to get your steel-toed boots. We have a fitness reimbursement program. Employees can get up to $300 a year, whether it's to your gym membership or building a home gym. And membership and professional fees. So, you know, I know the civil engineers belong to a lot of different groups, that required or not for their professions, but it just helps us stay in touch with things that are relevant to our occupations. Next slide. So as I talked about before, we try to promote what a great place it is to work here. A lot of that does. That's why I think employee referrals are so popular for us. We believe strongly in training our employees here. We send our supervisors to the Michigan Public Service Institute, shortened to MPSI. They have spring sessions and fall sessions. We try to get everybody, including group leaders that are on that management track, through this program. We do a lot of training, and we have trainers here that work with IMSA. Can you help me with that acronym, Cheryl?
International Municipal Signal Association.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm sure Brent's cringing right now, but it's close.
With our signs and signals. You know, we work strongly. We have a safety committee here. Obviously safety is first and foremost for us here. Safety and health, also looking at wellness within the organization. I know something that attracted and has, you know, that I've stayed here for is really a quality of life, stability, balance that we have. And then a lot of people here are service-oriented people. They want to work in the community that they live in, to give back, to be a part of it. That may just be even in their nature. We have people that, a lot of paid on call type of firefighters, and that do a lot within their community and give back. And so I think having that sort of job as your full-time also, that's the type of people we definitely attract. And that also goes with, I think, the veterans too. They seem to find this a good transition from the military world to the type of atmosphere that we have. Next slide. We are very much into communication with our employees, trying to be open and transparent. Cheryl absolutely has excelled at that since she's been in her position. She's had, through COVID-19, we've definitely been doing, she does at least a weekly email to all employees. We try to get it to them in any and all channels that we're able to do. We had started a couple years back where each of the directors and myself visit each yard or department just for like an informal chat where they can ask. It's just like myself and say District 4, and I go there in the morning, and it's their opportunity to ask anything and everything that they might want to. We're trying to dispel myths and rumors and just be able to be available and you know, let them know that there's really nothing that we're hiding. The internal channels that we use for that communication, so we may send out an email and it goes to all PC users. We're always asking that the foreman print that off and have that available for their employees, or share the message that we're sending out. Employees are able to get their personal email added to that all PC user. So if they don't have a work email, they can add their personal, and they'll get the same email that the rest of us get. We have that employee Facebook group that employees are able to join. And even if we just have an internal posting for bid through TPOAM, that will get posted there so that if an employee maybe was off and didn't hear from their foreman, they're still able to know that that's available. We do those yard postings. Again, that's where we print things off and they're posted in a central location, maybe by the kiosk. Our big one was adding those digital boards. So every yard has their screen. We do our slides, we update them weekly. If there's an urgent topic that needs to go out, we can update it that day to be able to, it comes up as even my screensaver, everybody's screensaver on their computer so that we're all seeing the same messages. And then again, I had mentioned the yard visits that we're doing. Did I miss anything there, Cheryl, do you think, on communication?
No, I think you've done a nice job describing that.
Okay, next slide. And then we have our employee groups. So not only are we going out and talking to them, but bringing them back in to be able to communicate with us. So the safety committee is long-standing. We have people across the organization represented to be able to talk about our safety topics. And then we have our employee think tank, which is newer. This was really a brainchild of Alicia's to be able to talk about more general things within the organization. So it may be organizing a bowling night just because we're so segregated having the different yards throughout the county that to bring people together, whether it's drivers or myself or, you know, Dan, just to be able to get to know each other better on a personal level. And then maybe there's serious concerns that they bring about, you know, they may just talk about if communication could be a big topic on where they come up with other ideas where people feel like there's a disconnect somewhere in the organization. Or I don't know, did you have some things you could share that the employee think tanks talked about, Alicia?
Yeah, one of the ideas that came up recently before all the COVID stuff again was kind of a job shadowing program that we were looking into where employees throughout the organization could job shadow other employees. So if, you know, they want to move up in the organization or are curious about a position and what that position does, that they can explore that and kind of grow within the organization. So things like that have come up. I think it's been a great avenue for people to share their thoughts and ideas. And it's fairly new, so we're still coming up with ideas.
Yeah, the job shadowing training opportunities that
yeah.
inquired about or have asked if there's different components of training that could be added as well. So it's been nice to see the breadth of the ideas that have come out of it, whether they've both been informal and more formal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what it helps is not only to learn about, you know, it just helps the work environment where we can know each other more on a personal level or even put a face to a name. It helps us relate better. And even with the job shadowing, maybe that's not a position you want to do, but, you know, like we have Lisa go ride with the plow trucks or experience different projects because it helps her to be able to answer or to have empathy for the truck drivers that are out there that are doing their job or to better help answer questions that come in as a customer relations representative. Next slide. I think that's it. Okay, so.
Well, thank you, Nicole. Are there any additional questions? I mean, I know we've had quite a few as we've been going through, which has been wonderful. That's a little bit about who we are and the different efforts that we've put in place and the areas where we certainly need to continue to work and to grow. And we appreciate any assistance, any ideas that may continue to come out of this as we've, like I said, we've shared sort of both where we think we're excelling and then in areas where we need to continue to improve.
If I could just suggest, and I don't know where you would place this, but applicants need to understand that they have to pass a drug screen. As many of you may know, there's a widespread use of, for example, marijuana. And if someone's using that on their own time, it's going to show up in a drug screen. But it gives them an opportunity to abstain for a period of time so they can pass a drug screen. But I would hate to have someone inspired to apply for whatever position. I understand the CDL probably includes that component, only to be surprised, perhaps humiliated by that when they're not under the influence at the time of application. So just a thought.
The CDL, you are right that if you are a CDL holder, it is required federally. So there is no question about that. If you should know if you're a CDL holder that you are to be drug-free.
Right, but as
marijuana included.
When I spoke with a few younger people about these prospective opportunities, they asked me, and I contacted Alicia and said, you know, is everybody subject to a drug screen, no matter what position you're applying for? And she said, yes. And I believe in the parity of all that. I'm not suggesting I want to push back on it, but I think people need to know that. If I'm applying to be a permits clerk or receptionist, I'm going to have to pass a drug screen.
Yes, we are a drug-free employer.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for everyone's time.
Thank you very much. All right. Like I said, that's a little bit about who we are and what we've been doing on the employee attraction and retention side of things. Moving ahead, are we good to go on to keep moving, Mr. Chair?
Please.
All right. The next topic on our agenda is virtual board meetings and the Open Meetings Act. We are currently operating with our virtual board meetings and working sessions under the Executive Order 75, which does allow for this format. That executive order does expire currently on June 30th. So been looking at the actual Open Meetings Act and what the requirements would be for that. As we move back to what is likely to require some form of an in-person board meeting. And I do need to continue to do additional research on that as far as the ability to have remote attendance and whether or not that is first of all, permissible under the Open Meetings Act. And if it is permissible, then we will likely need to modify our board bylaws in order to reaffirm that, first of all, we would allow that for our meetings, and then how that would work for our particular organization moving forward. I have reached out at least to CRA and asked them to check in through their lobby groups. They are not aware right now that Executive Order 75 will be extended, although certainly those things have changed without a lot of notice in the past. But it would require any changes to the Open Meetings Act itself would require actual changes to the legislation. So that would have to move through that entire process if there were to be changes made to the actual Open Meetings Act in its entirety once this executive, which is what we would be operating under once the executive order expires. So we on the staff level are starting to explore if we were to move back to having in-person board meetings, exactly what that would look like with respect to the physical requirements in the board meeting room itself, so that we can certainly spread out and have social distance. If we were to amend the bylaws and to have remote attendance, how would we incorporate those commissioners into the board meeting as part, so that the interaction is appropriate there. And then, of course, the requirements of the Open Meetings Act with respect to the public, so that we would be accommodating in-person and potentially remote access for the public to participate in the meetings as well. So there is a little bit more information that we need to gather here and understand whether or not this executive order is going to expire or be continued from here. I think that we can agree that Zoom has been a wonderful tool for us. And if there's a way to incorporate it at some level moving forward, at least my understanding is that would be the desire. And I guess I will put that forward as a question, that as we're starting to put protocols in place and looking to where we want to go into the future, indeed, is that something that we want to try to incorporate?
Mr. Chair, may I speak?
Please.
I recommend that we modify our bylaws to accommodate the potential for virtual meetings going forward, so that we are prepared and not sideways of our bylaws. And I would also suggest that perhaps an inquiry of the Attorney General asking for a declaratory ruling on whether or not holding virtual meetings after the expiration of Executive Order 75, what does that mean? We all go to jail, or we get our hands? I mean, what does it mean? I, for one, a woman of a certain age, am very reluctant to suggest that the pandemic is under control and over. Everything that I read and hear from public health experts says we shouldn't be fooled by the decreases we're experiencing right now, that there's going to be a backlash and we better be ready for it. So I'd like to be ahead of the curve on this and continue to meet virtually until there is some definitive treatment and or vaccine that we can rely on to keep everybody safe.
Agreed.
We know when the executive order expires?
Currently, the executive order expires June 30th.
Okay, thank you.
So Barbara, I don't know if that was a motion, but if it's a motion, then I second it.
In a working session, Gloria, we don't do that kind of thing. So I would expect that we'd need something prepared for our next meeting, right?
So July 7th is our next meeting.
Right.
Assuming that the executive order is not extended means that it expired. So we're planning at this point, we expect that we may have to meet in person, but certainly want to make sure that if this is the direction that the board is interested in going, that we can amend or have recommendations for bylaws that would accommodate this and as much as possible. And I think it's been a great tool moving forward, pandemic or no pandemic. I think that it has given a lot of flexibility with respect to how we conduct business. And also it's been a good tool for allowing the public access. We don't necessarily, at least that I can see, have a lot of public at this particular working session, but I know for the board meetings, we've had several township supervisors that have been attending, not necessarily participating, but certainly attending. And the more that we can do that in a manner that is open and people can understand the decision-making that is going on, I think that it makes better business for us in the long run. So I think that we have found it to be a very useful tool. And if we can continue to incorporate it into how we do business, I think that we should. And if that's the direction that the board at least, and we don't need a formal motion on that, but certainly that's something that staff can continue to work on and bring forth for you in early July. I'd be happy to do that.
Rod Green.
I'm sorry.
Rod Green.
Do we have to consult with our attorneys about it?
It looks like that's going to be the case because I have not been able to find anything definitive exactly to what Commissioner Barb Fuller indicated of what are the consequences of being able or not being able to do, and if you violate the remote attendance. From what I've been able to see, it's very specific with respect to military service that the Open Meetings Act permits remote attendance. I haven't seen it any broader than that. So I have informally spoken with our legal counsel, but I think that we will need to seek something a little bit more formal.
It has to be allowed. Kathy White, who is a U of M regent, virtually never, and I use that word too loosely, she is almost never present at meetings of the U of M regents. She lives and works out of state. So she's not been removed from the U of M Board of Regents. She's not, to my knowledge, been penalized. She's a well-respected attorney, so the woman knows what she's doing. I am not inclined to start meeting in person again at this point in time.
Barb, you made a point I appreciate. Rod Green, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we move forward along the lines that Barb is suggesting as far as you're concerned?
I would say yes, but I think we have to check with our attorneys to make sure that there's no violation.
Understood.
Yeah.
But let's set that aside.
Yes.
Are you willing to move forward with that? Joanne?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Joanne, it sounds like you are prepared to move forward with that idea.
I am, yes.
Okay, thank you. Gloria?
Yes, I also had another question. I do like that idea is what are our requirements for making a motion to try and change bylaws? Is there a 30-day or it's obviously too soon to put it on this afternoon's agenda, not enough information, but yes, I am so inclined. I believe I fully in agreement with Barb's statements.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl? Hello?
Yes.
That's a consensus of the board.
Thank you. And with that, staff will certainly work with legal counsel to make sure that anything that we recommend is going to be legal and permissible, but having this direction was very helpful, and we will certainly accommodate that.
I personally think that this is something where the County Road Association should be taking the lead. Now, I don't know if Denise necessarily thinks that or not, but I would certainly like to think that we would not be the only road commission that's coming to a similar conclusion here. So I would think that the County Road Association, in point of fact, would be considering this very, very carefully. Is that something that you'd like to communicate with her about?
I have spoken with both Denise and Ed at CRA, and they, other than saying they're not aware of anything, that is the best information I have received from them. But I have asked multiple times at this point.
Okay.
It appears that Gail Cummings with McChrysop seems to be a little bit more in tune on this particular subject. So she was circling back with their legal counsel as well to see if this is something that they have seen anything further on.
I just have to say, I'm not inclined to wait on them. I mean, you've been asking them for what, 2 months, Cheryl, nearly?
Correct.
When I first expressed my concern.
Yep.
So, you know, sorry, get out of our way and we'll figure this out ourselves if they can't.
Well, understood, Barb. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just making the observation that I would have expected them to be out in front here.
Understood.
I am not looking for their approval. So I just, and Lord knows they got, now we're paying for direct access to the Capitol through the County Road Association.
Certainly, if they provide anything that is useful, we will use it. I'm just not aware.
Absolutely, yeah. So anyway, so there's the direction.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Political sign removal, hot topic.
Yes. So another subject that frequently comes up as we get into the political election cycle, and knowing that the August primary is coming up soon, is the proliferation of road signs, especially those that are of a political nature. The current board policy is very broad. It allows for removal of any and all signs that are illegally placed within the county road right-of-way. It can be removed without notice, and they can be permanently disposed of. So it is a very broad policy. We also know it becomes a very touchy subject, especially during the election cycle, and the fact that is often a common place where signs are put up. As we spoke about this, I believe it would have been 2 years ago when we would have had the midterm elections. We were, from the staff perspective, it was pretty clear that while we might have the ability to remove signs on a whole-scale nature, that the intent was that staff would be very judicious in the removal of signs and basically limit those activities to locations where it would be a safety matter, where they may create sight distance issues. For example, 2 years ago, we had a particular candidate who basically took an entire roundabout, and on every single approach and every single island and in every single basically open space had put up political signs, and it was obstructing the ability to see as you entered the right of way, and it was certainly a heavy distraction as you were pulling in. Those signs were removed because of the safety concerns associated with that. That is an example where it was one candidate. So as you can imagine, the perception was that we weren't being fair. But in that particular case, it really had to do with the fact that only one candidate had placed the signs in that location. And again, they were visual obstructions to the safe operation of that location. So that would be an example where we would potentially take out signs. We've had them affixed to stop signs. And any type of a regulatory sign, again, we would use them there or take them down there. And then also we do have to perform roadside mowing, roadside ditching, those types of operations. And we potentially would do sign removal in advance of those operations, so that when we operate equipment such as mowers, we can do so in a safe manner. And the last thing we'd want to do is to hit a sign and have any pieces of the sign then, go flying into traffic or to potentially hurt somebody, including our own staff. So again, I just wanted to bring that up, knowing that as we are entering, I know I myself have started to see whether they're political candidate signs or political statement signs on my own drives around the county. I just wanted to assure the board that we have the policy is broad, but the guidance to staff will be to be smart and judicious in how we do any of the sign removal. Are there any questions on that?
Cheryl, I have a couple, or
sure.
Basically one. I would really like to be in the position of when the determination is made that we have a safety issue that's a result of some signs. Let's make very sure that we are photographing that.
Yes.
And it just occurred to me while you were talking, is this a place where see-click-fix might be an appropriate tool?
Well, certainly anyone can report an issue through see-click-fix,
right.
And we would address it in that manner. But we have discussed that it would be appropriate for staff to take a picture prior to the removal of the sign, so that if we do receive questions after the fact, we can demonstrate that indeed there was an issue there and why the signs were removed.
And then also, as part of that, it's not really a question, just an observation. I think it would be useful that there needs to be clear direction to the staff about who is making that determination, that we have, that is clearly a problem. Okay, yes. Fine. I trust anybody that works here to make that determination personally. Okay, but I think we should also make sure that as I said, we take some photographs and B, that that person reports to somebody besides himself or herself, so that ultimately you are not blindsided with phone calls from candidate B, who is objecting to his signs being taken down, and why didn't you take down his signs? So there needs to be some kind of clearly defined and direction to our staff over this.
Agreed.
Okay. I'll shut up.
If I remember correctly, Jim spoke to this last time in terms of, do we want our crews during the height of the construction season to also be the sign police, and how does that detract and distract from what they're actually trying to do? So I'd like to hear from Jim on this. Also, I would hope that on our communications channels, we are putting out there, attention candidates, keep your, and residents, right? Keep your signs out of the right of way. And what does that mean? Does that mean nothing within, 20 feet of the edge of the road? Tell them what it means, and that signs may be removed and will not be returned. Because we used to have the mountain of signs where we could go out there and pick through them and take our own signs back. And that was discontinued several cycles ago. But I think we need to be pushing that out in our communication, so we cannot be accused of being arbitrary, to Doug's point. But also, Jim, I want to hear about, your people out there dealing with this, because there will be some confrontations, I suspect.
It's unlikely that anybody will be standing there when we take the signs out. We are extremely busy. We have much higher priorities to accomplish than running about the county policing illegal signs posted in the right-of-way. With that said, the foreman and superintendents will, in the course of their travels, if they see a sign that does not comply with the board's policy, they will grab it and throw it in the back of their truck and dispose of it when they come back to their yard. There have been instances where in the latter part of the year, as we're approaching the election, there are literally thousands of these things. And we'll have a day, let's say, where, we can't just dedicate staff to be policing this. So we'll find opportunities where we can dispatch crews and go deal with that problem, and they will remove these things wholesale and haul them to the landfill up in Salem Township and dispose of them there, subject to the board's policy. And it's really trying to get caught up, finding an opportunity to deal with this real problem. They are safety hazards. They are distracting the motorists from obeying and observing important signs that we have to post and put along the road. Speed limit signs, stop ahead, stop signs. We don't want anything that takes away from that. Most of this is advertisement of something, political or otherwise. So it's put there for a reason, to draw attention. And then there are obstacles to all of our maintenance obligations. Mowing, Cheryl pointed that out, is an obvious one. This stuff can get entangled in our mowers, damage equipment, get fired out of the mower decks at 300 miles an hour and cause property damage and personal injury or worse. And there have been instances where insurance pool has dealt with worse. So we take it very seriously, but again, we don't have the resources to be running about policing this perhaps as we wish we could. And so it's very limited. The election cycle really creates the problem. That's when there's this proliferation of these everywhere. And I've told staff, I always find it ironic, folks that are running for public office to be lawmakers, in many cases, blatantly violating the law, their campaigns, let's say, and installing these everywhere. So I agree, Barb, if we can continue to message and notify the campaigns to don't put this in the right of way, I'm hopeful that that helps reduce it.
And perhaps our county clerk could be a partner in spreading the word on this as well. I know all candidates almost all candidates have filing deadlines that are now behind them. But when a candidate files for office, if they would be willing to post or hand them, if they come in and do it in person, a notice about the yard signs so that candidates can't claim they didn't know. The public is the bigger problem, I suspect. Closer to election day, you are going to see them at exit ramps, stop signs, roundabouts, major intersections. So just, you know, to the extent that we can give advance notice and say, you know, you had 30 days notice on this. Don't be coming to us. And I'm happy to impart that message as well. And also, I do not remove signs. As a road commissioner, I don't mess with that. So I don't believe we are empowered to do that kind of thing. If we are, let me know. But I don't believe we are. So we have to rely on our crews to the extent that it's possible for them to bother with it. But we need our candidates and the public to know that this is not allowed and we will take action.
Barb, a couple more points. We really view it from a hierarchy. We're looking at the major road system first and foremost, the major intersections. We're not interested in going into residential communities. They shouldn't be in that right away either, but that's such low speed, low volume, low priority. With limited resources and the fiscal constraints we have, we really focus on the high speed, high volume roads where urban roadways, where it's much more of a complex driving environment and our safety sensitivity is that much higher. The other is we are a contract county for MDOT. And MDOT has policies and expectations of us under contract to perform a variety of maintenance activities, and dealing with these illegal installations in the right of way is part of that, especially where there's a safety issue or they're interfering with our maintenance obligations to the Michigan Department of Transportation. So we're having to address both the county road system and the state trunk lines in tandem. And the state trunk lines are like our highest priority because of traffic volume and safety. The speeds are so much higher.
Well, many of the townships have sign ordinances of their own that they can be encouraged to enforce, as well as their clerks. Township offices don't necessarily go into the county. And then you've got, you know, the clerks and the supervisors at the township level, but also ordinance enforcement officers for those communities who are large enough to have such a person on staff.
It's not uncommon for a township clerk or supervisor to contact us and ask us to address this. And it becomes such a blight in their community, and they're receiving complaints, and they look to us as the road agency to address that.
Understood.
Are there any other questions or comments on that? All right. Next up on the agenda is our closed session. However, if we could, prior to going into the closed session, our chair, would you still like us to report on Trinkley Road briefly?
Yes, please.
All right. With that, I'd be happy to hand it over to Matt McDonnell. This is also relevant to the one of the consent agenda items this afternoon, which is our second agreement with Lima Township. They have asked us to perform some work, specifically a hill cut on Trinkley Road. And I think that there's been a few questions from the public on this project, and I'd like Matt to have an opportunity to explain exactly what the project is, and between Matt and Jim, since this has sort of been a joint project between both our engineering and operations departments, can explain how the work would proceed, and certainly all of it being at the request of Lima Township. So with that, Matt, if you could give us an overview of the project itself, that would be helpful.
Sure, thank you, Cheryl. You should see on the screen Google Maps of the Chelsea area. If I could just get a confirmation you are seeing that.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so we're in Chelsea. To the north, we have Dexter Chelsea Road. To the south, we have Old US 12 running east and west, and then running north and south, we have M52 Main Street. And then over here, you see Dexter Chelsea High School. To the west of border, we've got Freer Road. And then south of the high school, we've got Trinkley Road, which is the subject of the local road improvement. So this is a project requested by the township through the local road program. Jim Harmon and I worked together to put together an estimate and agreement on the scope of work, and ultimately that's in the board packet for this afternoon for your approval under consent. And I can just quickly go to the board packet, and that's the Lima Township second agreement. It's Trinkley Road, Hill Cut. It's between Hurst Drive and Terra Lane. I'll go back to the aerial in a minute. And the work involves contracted services, meaning we would bid out and a contractor would perform the work to improve the vertical alignment of Trinkley Road. Work to include contractor mobilization, tree removal, stump removal, clearing, earth excavation, some geotextile fabric, drive culvert installations, driveway removal and replacement, adjusting mailboxes, and ultimately then our operations department would do the limestone resurfacing by direct force, placement of 6 inches of 23A limestone after all the earthwork has been done. So why would the township want to embark on this project? Let's just go back to the aerial. Again, Chelsea High School off to the west. Our western limit is this Hurst Drive. It's a private road that ultimately goes into this subdivision. And then we have Terra Lane, another private road that is to the south, that goes to the south, but is our eastern border. So as we look at the aerial, you can see we're dealing with several driveways for the private roads and also the individual driveways of the homeowners. And here we can look, what I'll do now is go to the Google view on Google Maps, where we can essentially drive the road together here virtually. What I'm doing is looking westbound as we're looking west, driving towards the high school, starting out at this private road. I believe it's Terra Lane. Yep. So we're going to move to the west, and as we move to the west, you can see up ahead what we call that is a hill crest. It's a vertical curve in the road where we have very limited sight distance. And as you can see, as we approach, and keep in mind, our gravel roads are prima facie, so that means people can drive 55 miles an hour and then also slow down depending on conditions. Our hope would be that because of the limited sight distance, certainly traffic is slowing down. I also will remark that the roadway width is pretty narrow as we approach that hill crest, and that tends to slow folks down because of the narrowing of the road. We have very limited ditching on this road, so our project would incorporate improving that situation. Certainly it's not ideal, but sometimes common whereby the water is running along the road driving surface. That certainly presents a hazard during rain events and during the spring thaw. And it's something that drivers have to become accustomed in dealing with. So this project would address that along with the hill crest. So as we are approaching to the west, you can see there are several trees that line the road as well that will be needing to be removed as we lower that hill crest so we can see over the hill better. So we can we're getting real close, and yet we still can't see over that hill. So it's not until you get to the top of the hill where the driveways are located that you can start to see a little more as far as sight distance. We're right, if we go back to the aerial, we're kind of really right in this area. We're right at the top of the hill. And as we move to the west, we get into another vertical grade whereby as we progress to the west, you can see obviously tree lines and driveways to deal with. And you can certainly see as you come down the hill, but if you were to turn around and go eastbound, so we're at Hurst Road, the private road. If we turn around and look eastbound, you can see very limited sight distance again for eastbound traffic as well as westbound traffic. So that's the goal of the project, is essentially to take the hill down, and it's approximately 4 feet. I will go ahead and put a plan sheet up. We did develop a very preliminary plan sheet, enough to understand, getting an understanding of the scope of the project and the limits of the project that Lima Township has requested us to do. Ultimately approve the agreement, but also the scope of work. At their request, we're lowering the hill approximately 4 feet. We're grading the ditching, getting the appropriate ditching on both sides of the road, widen the road out to 22 feet. So that there's quite a bit of work to be done. And so what you see up top here, north is up, west and east. We've got our limits of Hurst Drive and Terra Lane over here, and then we've got the various driveways associated with those residential driveways we saw on the aerial. And then ultimately, this is what the vertical profile of the road looks like. And the bold line here is what it looked like after the project. So by cutting out each bar grid represents a foot approximately. So we're taking out nominally a 4 foot out and lowering the road, which ultimately has an impact on all these driveways. And we have pretty significant grading to do and earthwork to take away. The road is shifted, not necessarily in the center of the right of way, so we do have a little room to work. It's slightly to the north, so there's more significant grading probably to do to the south as we widen the road to 22 feet. So significant tree removal. As we define trees as being 6 inches or greater, there would be 30 trees that get removed as part of this project. We would be working with the property owners, letting them know what the scope of the work is. But those trees are all located in the right-of-way, so we would not be providing any compensation to property owners. If we were to remove a tree outside the right-of-way, that's where you get into compensation, but that isn't the case here. We are looking to get grading permits for tying their driveways back. As you can imagine, if we're lowering the road 4 feet, we've got a significant amount of work to do on their driveways to adjust the driveway grade such that they reconnect to the new lowered road and then tie back to the existing driveway on their property. So we are going to be working with, if this agreement is approved by the board, our staff, the road commission staff, will be working with property owners to secure grading permission and presenting good faith offers for grading of their driveways and letting them know the scope of the work of the project. So with that, I certainly open it up to questions that any of the board or anyone has, and also offer up to Jim Harmon. Is there anything you'd like to add, as this is a joint project whereby the engineering department has developed the plan, will certainly secure quotes, get bids and a bid tabulation, and certainly we will work with the township and let them know what the price of the low bid is. And then again, that work will be administered by the engineering department staff, but then at the conclusion of our work, that the operations department would then place the limestone 6 inches on top of the road grade that was prepared by our contractor. Jim, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I would. The township and members of the traveling public have expressed interest in improving the safety of this section.
Jim, I can't hear you.
Okay.
There, better.
That's better? Very good.
Yes.
Thank you. The township and the traveling public have expressed interest in this safety improvement for several years and in tremendous earnest over the last 2 years. The Lima Township Board recently unanimously approved the agreement that is before you this afternoon. That agreement was signed as a result of that unanimous approval by both the clerk and the supervisor. As Matt said, this is at the request of the township. They see this as an important safety improvement, safety investment, and they very much would like it to go forward. They are concerned about cost, as we are. They're hopeful that the bid prices, should our board, you approve this afternoon, reflect a lower total cost than what is estimated. And they did condition their approval recently on their ability to review and accept the bid results. And that's reflected in the resolution that staff has presented, that Matt and I presented to you for this afternoon. We're comfortable with that. It's their money. We want them to be satisfied with the bid result. And we would give them that opportunity and seek a formal response as part of our recommendation, Matt's recommendation to you subsequently to approve and award the contract. So again, this is at the township's request. This is important to them. And they would like to see this to go forward, but conditioned upon the final bid price.
So Jim and Matt, I'm assuming that the residents in the township are aware that there will be significant tree removal. And
that is my
understanding, right?
That is my understanding. This has been discussed several times at the township board, most recently with the approval of the agreement. I understand there are residents that are concerned about that environmental impact in those tree removals. The township heard that during their public meeting, and ultimately, after their deliberation, unanimously approved the project going forward. They understand those needs and those impacts.
Will there be any tree replacement? Just wondering.
No.
Okay.
So
I have.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Joanne.
Jim, have there been any accidents or anything? Because it does seem very unsafe, especially, it doesn't seem like they have any lighting out there. So I imagine at night it's really bad. Have there been any reported accidents?
Not to our knowledge, but we have heard anecdotally and from the township officials near misses, folks probably exceeding basic speed law and really crowding the center of the road and encountering oncoming vehicles. And that's the primary concern, especially next to the high school, that motorists would have a head-on collision there. So that's what's behind the interest in lowering the hill crest, improving the sight lines, and having a proper 22-foot width for two-way traffic.
So my question is, and I do understand that this is at the township's request, and they've heard the residents' concerns about the environmental impact, but generally the blowback comes back to Washtenaw County Road Commission. And I do see, it looks like it'll impact somebody's landscaping on their property. How is that going to be handled? I imagine that a resident will be quite upset. Now it looks like that was maybe put in the easement, but that looks like a costly, and it's on your print also, some landscaping. How's that going to be handled? And are those also been put into consideration? 30 trees, that's a huge amount of trees. But the ones that and it looks obvious, those that are very close to the roads, but those that are kind of just on the edge of the easement, looks like those also will be removed. And how that is going to be handled, or how has the township handled that? Because ultimately it does blow back on the road commission. We could tell I don't want to try and remove or place blame anyplace else, but that is still a huge issue.
So I can certainly speak to the how we communicate with residents. Certainly, we are fortunate we have a right-of-way specialist that will reach out to all the individual property owners in the project area. They'll make them aware of the scope of the project, any of the removals. If there is landscaping in the right-of-way, we typically have ample opportunity for them to remove the landscaping and to recover any plantings and then place it outside the easement or outside the scope of the work. The schedule of this project will likely be in the fall, just based on our ability to go get secure quotes, and any contractor that's worth their weight is very busy right now. So bidding something out now for the fall is reasonable, but we also may look at availability. It may be an issue. So that will give residents time to certainly ask questions. It will give us time to secure the necessary grading permits. It'll give them time if there are impacts to landscaping or plantings along their property frontage to get them relocated. As far as the tree issues, certainly we would deal with this on a regular basis. A lot of our projects are quite impactful. If you look at any of our pathway projects that are administered for our TAP projects, hundreds of the trees get impacted. In the name of safety, certainly this is one that is quite obvious when looking at the hill crest, but certainly that improvement comes at a cost. And it is unfortunate that there are so many trees that are impacted, but this does come at a cost. And it's one that the township sees value in investing that amount of money, because that is a large sum of money for a township to invest in a local road. It is a lower volume as far as the amount of traffic on the road. It is a low volume road, and it is a local road. So when we're looking at these investments or improvements, we have to have a partner per our Act 51. Cheryl, is there anything you'd like to add?
I was just going to build on what you were saying, Matt, and specifically that the design was performed in a manner to try to limit the impact period to the entire area, and specifically for the trees that would have to be removed. So what you're seeing is really the minimum that could be done and still done safely to accomplish the purpose of why the road improvement is being made, and still have a minimum width, as Matt described, to get the two vehicles to be able to pass each other. And then we do have to have drainage at that point too. So there does have to be, a minimal amount of drainage that is put in place for the road improvement to stay in place in the long run. So that is the absolute minimum design that we can do. We do not enjoy taking trees out for no purpose. It's expensive to take trees out for no purpose, and it's certainly not the desire of the residents, whether they're along that roadway or within Washtenaw County, and we recognize all of that. But at the end of the day, we're balancing to come up with as safe as design as we can, and then this is a priority based on the safety concerns of the township. And so we do have to have something that is ultimately satisfactory to the road commission, because to your point, it is our road.
Yeah, and it is a case of competing interests, competing priorities from an environmental standpoint versus a safety standpoint. We deal with these quite often. And Brent just let me know that there were 2 crashes in a 3-year period, and on a local road that can be viewed as significant when you have a rather low volume.
Well, all of this is really informative and needed, because often conversations I see, as people already have, is one of the concerns or the impression that they get is that we're unconcerned with environment. And I know that that's not true. So it's good to have information and verbiage that we can talk to and know that there's an attempt to lessen the impact on the environment. And hence that's why as I looked at the blueprint, I can almost predict by that blueprint who is going to be upset, you know, and people will be coming forward. And I think that we should expect that and know that. So thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Gloria, that was a carefully thoughtful observation you just made. Both times you've just spoken. Because of the impact on the trees and this agency's sensitivity to the topic, shall we say, we need, I think, as an agency, we need, every time we are asked about this by the public, number one, our basic rule of thumb is we have one spokesperson for this agency. And as far as the commissioners are concerned, we need to refer, because we will get phone calls, okay? And if it's somebody that you know of, you can be as, you know, use your own judgment. When you're being asked by a news agency, please refer them to Emily. And Emily's phone is, you know, both turned on and they'll get sense out of that. My concern, and it's exactly what Gloria just referred to, is we will be the bad guys. Absolutely. So everything that we as an agency, not Doug Fuller or Gloria Yamas or anybody else, but as an agency, everything we need to say needs to be prefaced with, this is the decision of the township. This is what the township wants to have. We are obligated as the road agency for this county to respond to the township's requests. This is a clear request. Every attempt has been made by our staff to minimize the impact on the adjacent property owners and consequently the environment. The township has made the decision to move forward. They have not, as Jim pointed out very carefully, and it's very clearly part of the action that we'll take today, the township has retained the right to review the bids, and no bid will be awarded until they are satisfied. Matt, is that a reasonable statement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ultimately, it will come back to our board as a recommendation to award a contract, and that will also be accompany the township's determination to move forward.
Thank you. I'd like to assure our two new commissioners that every attempt by every project that this agency undertakes is very carefully considered from every standpoint that we can come up with. Very carefully. Cost is always a huge issue. The impact on the surrounding area is a huge issue. And we do not do anything, including tree removal or sign removal or anything else that's going to impact our residents without malice aforethought. So, Matt, I think that was a good presentation. Cheryl, thank you for the indulgence on the agenda, because I really thought that it was necessary for all the commissioners to hear the presentation. So with that, I'll be quiet. If there are other questions by commissioners or staff, this is a good time.
I have a question. Matt, when is this work predicted for September then, or October?
I think October 1 and beyond. If prices come in quite high, It might be a response to the contractor's availability. And then our recommendation may be to potentially rebid with a mindset of accomplishing the work next year. But that remains to be seen, but that's an option. But as it stands today, we will request quotes with a start date of October 1.
Thank you.
It's also possible that the bids will come in high and exceed what the township's willing to pay, and they'll decline, and the project would be terminated at this point, perhaps postponed, deferred to a future decision, perhaps next year. So that all remains to be seen.
Jim, for round numbers, how many tons of presumably 23A or any other product will be required to finish that off?
This short section of road, Mr. Chair, will take about 650 tons of 23 lines. That'll end up with a half a foot of compacted in place surface aggregate.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Hearing none. Gloria, I want to again thank you for your input, because that hit exactly where it needed to be. Cheryl, are we ready to move forward to the closed session?
The next item on the agenda is for our closed session. It is a legal update. There's on multiple lawsuits that we'd like to at least introduce to the board, and one specifically that you will be asked, highly likely to take action on in July. With it being a closed session, we will have to ask that anybody who is that this does not pertain to exit at this time, so that we can enter into a closed session. Although we probably need our legal counsel to come back since he has exited momentarily. So hopefully he will return here quickly.
Cheryl, I think we need a vote to move into closed, don't we?
Agreed.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. I was about to ask for a motion from someone.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move into closed session at this time to review the legal matters.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. This will require a roll call vote. Commissioner Fuller, as in Barb.
It looks like Barb stepped away for a minute.
Okay. Commissioner Rod Green.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Yes.
Commissioner Joanne McCollum.
Yes.
And Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Yes.
And Doug Fuller votes yes as well. So we are now in closed session. Emily, are there commissioners that wish to bring up something else at this particular point in time, or may we adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
I support.
Been moved and seconded. Barb Fuller?
Yes.
Rod Green?
Yes.
Gloria?
Yes.
And Joanne?
Yes.
And Doug Fuller votes yes as well. We are adjourned. We'll see you back in